Ya'ate, hello. Welcome to Real Native Roots, Untold Stories, a podcast by a Native woman with deep roots. Hosted by yours truly, Vicky Katsuliboy Oldman. I am a lover of stories, a connector, and a holder of wisdom keepers. Each month, we will be connecting with our Native relatives and exploring what medicine our guests share and offer to us. Please join me on this uncharted journey to learn, connect, and reflect. Ayahat. Thank you. Yate. Hello. How are you all doing this beautiful day? You know, when we wake up, we're just grateful that we're here on this planet, another day to make a difference, to work on ourselves and to do what we need to do. I think we take that for granted that, we wake up, we're like, time to make the donuts. I don't know if some of you remember those commercials back in the day, but I think it's like in the 80s. Anyway, I hope you're well. I do. And I feel like my message lately in having conversation with people is to really just take care of yourself. And it seems easy to do that. And it's hard. It takes work. And it takes a different mindset too, to make better choices on what we eat and how we move about. I know this about myself, and that is I like things to be organized. And it's really easy for me to get messy. Like, I'll come running in from doing errands and I'll just kind of throw my bag there and my jacket and kick off my shoes and I get to work. And the next day I do that again. And next thing you know, I have things all around. And then I notice how it affects my thinking and how it affects my efficiency and creativity. And so I spent this weekend cleaning my office. I love the way it is. I have like in front of me plants, all kinds of plants, and I have like all my rocks and my books, and I have this beautiful blanket. It's an old Navajo blanket that my grandmother had. That was her blanket, and my aunt gifted it to me, and so I have her all on the blanket, all on that big table with all of the things I just described. So I'm in a good place of like having all the things that matter to me, pictures and plants and books and medicine. So what's my learning here? My learning for you all is you need to do what you need to do to help you have a good mindset. And that's one thing that I do is like make sure I have good things that are alive and that put a smile on my face. And I also feel like it brings me energy. So I'm able to be in a creative place. Yeah, so that's my learning. So I hope you're doing what you got to do to take care of yourself and put yourself in a good place. Those of you that are new, I always read a poem, and I'm on the search all the time for different poems from different Indigenous or BIPOC writers, artists. And so this one is by N. Scott Momaday, and the name of the poem is called The Delight Song of Soai Teli. I think that's how you say it. It's a beautiful short poem. When I did the search, it pulled, I think, just a part of it. So it's not the whole thing. So I'm going to read what I got from this poem. Okay, here we go. I am a feather on the bright sky. I am the blue horse that runs in the plain. I am the fish that rolls shining in the water. I am the shadow that follows a child. I am the evening light, the luster of meadows. I am an eagle playing with the wind. I am a cluster of bright beads. I am the farthest star. I am the cold of dawn. I am the roaring of the rain. I am the glitter on the crust of the snow. I am a fire in the heart. I am the whole dream of these things. I love it. It's the first time really me reading this poem. I've read some of his other stuff, but this is beautiful. I love it because I feel like it's about identity. And of course, I feel like also the connection of being with like nature and everything that is around. It is so gorgeous. Gorgeous poem. I can't wait to have our guests share her thoughts about it. But before I ask her, I want to introduce to you my friend, my Indigenous sister. Oh my goodness, this woman is beautiful, smart, grounded. She's a lot of fun to hang out with. And did I say beautiful? Yeah, she's beautiful. In every which way, not just like her shell, but her soul. She is an amazing woman. I'm so honored to have a conversation with Jacqueline Catalina. I think that's how you say it. She can correct me later. Schaeffer, and she is a visionary of her people from Alaska. Her work really is about, like, I feel like it's about bridging her wisdom from her ancestors with today's challenges. She has a background in interior design, sustainable building, and she's really dedicated her life's work in reshaping environmental health, infrastructure, climate adaptation for Alaska Native communities. She's really about championing the local people for them to really have their voices heard and think about planning in a very traditional way. She's about her culture. She is about the language of her people, traditional healing, harvesting practices, the art of skin sewing. She's committed to bringing both worlds into her place, into her people. I can't wait to dive in to hear a little bit about her past, her present, and of course, the future of her community and where we're all at. So let's dive in. Jackie, welcome. Bring your voice into this space and have people hear you and tell us about you. Introduce yourself to us.
Hi. Hello, Rickben, mga atsaga Catalina, nila Jackie Schaeffer, ini Bainaranga, Aniranga Kekitarume, Anayaka Makiku, Kipkinyalu, Atataga Mayaklu, Avochuklu, Iglugoklu. I am Jackie Catalina Schaeffer. I am Inupiaq from the community of Kikitakruk, which is also known as Kotzebue on the northwest coast of Alaska, north of Nome, Alaska, if you're looking at the map. I was raised in a very traditional lifestyle by my parents, Makik and Kiprinya, John and Mary Schaeffer, and my grandparents, John and Annie Schaeffer, and Martha and Floyd Wheeler. We didn't know any of our European ancestry. We still don't. So our world really was centered on carrying on the traditions of our Inupiaq lifestyle. So growing up, I lived half in the western community of Kotzebue and then half up at our fish camp of Ibik, where our family did all our traditional harvesting. We are hunter-gatherers, and so most of our food, I would say even now, up to 80% of my food resources come from the airland and sea. I'm very fortunate to work across the state of Alaska, which is very large, because I have relatives that go all the way up into the North Slope, the Arctic Slope, along the Arctic Ocean, way at the top of Alaska. So I have family members that also participate in whalings for our food. So I get to travel there and bring food back. I'm very fortunate to have that lifestyle, even though I live in a city. And now I live about 40 miles north of Anchorage, Alaska, in South Central. I live in the community of Palmer, Alaska, which is surrounded by 3 mountain ranges, 2 glacial-fed rivers, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm a mother of 6 and a grandmother of 9. Number 10 will be here in August. I continue to not only work in the space of tribal advocacy, but also in the space of climate and health equity, because in Alaska, we have very unique governance that kind of bridges all those things. So all those other things that my beautiful friend Vicky mentioned, the skin sewing and the traditional healing and the medicinal plants, I teach that whenever I can at universities locally. I also love to participate at least once or twice a year in fashion shows and bridge the fashion of our traditional furs with modern design. But yeah, that's who I am. So thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, beautiful. There's so much to unpack in that intro. 80% of your food. Wow, that's amazing. And you go so far away and bring back food. I mean, that's amazing. I love seeing all your pictures on Facebook of the different kinds of meats that you have. It's amazing. Do you go out and do your own like fishing and I don't know what else you all harvest out there, from the air, land, and water?
Yeah, so I grew up on the ocean, well, in Cotsby Sound, which is a very large sound, a shallow sound that has its own ecological species, but we, obviously are right off the Chukchi Sea. So I grew up with very fresh seafood, but we also have, yes, I do all my own fishing, do all the harvesting, cutting, the prepping for preservation. I also make salmon skin leather, which was traditionally used for waterproof coats. Growing up in Kikitavruk, we have access to our own sea mammals. When I was a kid, there were actually lots of polar bears because the sea mammals were so high in abundance that the polar bears were always coming into the sound because it was like easy picking, right? Fast food in a shallow sea where the seals love to come eat small fish. But with climate impacts and the changing seasons, like everything is shifting. So our polar bears have pushed further north. Don't see them. I mean, it's a rare sighting anymore. But we also hunt. I'm not a hunter myself. I love harvesting and prepping the furs for sewing. But I'm not like, I don't want to go out and shoot anything. I am kind of a softie. So I have brothers that do that and have uncles. And so, yes, we get moose, we get caribou, we get reindeer, muskox. They've introduced bison to certain areas of Alaska now. I just got a quarter of a bison this year out of a lot of meat. So we harvest all 5 species of salmon, as well as a variety of other fish. I mean, I would say probably maybe 10 other species of fish so it's lots of variety. And then we also are the largest migratory bird area. So we get migrating birds from the south that come up in the spring and summer, and then they lay their eggs and then they fly back in the fall. So we have all of those bird species. But yeah, it's, and then of course, I'm part of a whaling family. So up in Utqiagvik, where is the very northern tip of Alaska, we still traditionally harvest our whales in umiak boats, which are made with bearded seal skin, sewn by the women, and then the men take them out and stealth the big whales. This year, there were many whales. We have the largest, healthiest population. Our bowhead whales only migrate in the Arctic Ocean. So they go from the Arctic Ocean down to the Bering Strait and then back up. So they only harvest in that cold water. Migrate in that cold water. So we harvest them all along the coast and all the way from Reykjavik to St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Strait, Bering Sea. So whaling is a big part of our world because the whales are anywhere from 30 to 60 feet long, and they serve the whole community. So there is no single family. All the whaling families work together to harvest and share the meat and the we call it muktuk, the skin and blubber of the whale. So it's a big, high protein. And we're finding, because I work in climate and health, we're finding very interesting things about our foods. And the bowhead whale is resistant to all cancers. And so there's things that we're finding out about our food systems that if we only ate traditional foods, how different our bodies would respond. So yeah, I know it's a lot. I could talk about my food systems all day long because that's my life.
it's a vital part of your life and now your work. And it's amazing. So I'm curious about, you had mentioned earlier about your parents and your grandparents, and it sounds like you have a large family. How do you feel that your family, your grandparents help play a part of shaping your identity?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I still had great grandparents when I was very little. And it was a whole different world. If you go back 100 years, our people were migratory. It wasn't until my grandmother's generation that Western contact started extracting our people and putting them in boarding schools. So our history is still living and walking amongst us, right? Mm-hmm. My their parents were both from up the north coast of Alaska. And so that's all my relations go all the way up the north coast of Alaska to Utqiagvik. My grandmother was from the oldest inhabited Inupiaq village, the oldest community. It's still established in all of North America. Mm-hmm. There for thousands and thousands of years. And their connection to the ocean and the land was very strong spiritually. And so they had what Westerners call shamans, but we call them traditional medicine people. And so my name, Catalina, is after Catalina. She was the last living traditional medicine person in that community that was recognized until they abolished that from, Western contact and church religion. But she was so powerful that she could summon the whales. And so she had a relationship with the ocean, with the mammals that, and every traditional medicine person had their gifts that were given by Creator. And so we have this saying, and I'm sure it's every Indigenous population, that when you're named after someone, you have to live up to your name. It's not just a name like it is in an English context. It is an establishment of who you are. So when I say Uvanga Atiga Katilinya, it's not just my name it's I am. And so when your poem totally resonates with me because we aren't just a name, we are living species that we dance in this harmonious dance with nature still to this day, eat the same foods for, in my family, over 600 generations, eating and harvesting the same foods. And that to me is powerful. So my grandparents, that's how they lived. They were, even when they went through, obviously Western contact where they were sent to school and this and that. And my grandmother was, worked at the hospital. And so I always thought she was a nurse because she had a uniform, but I don't think that's what she did. But she was a midwife. All her friends were traditional healers. So I learned the plant aspect, the traditional medicinal plant aspect from them. So they really did form who I am. And in our culture, the children are raised by the grandparents because there's too much conflict amongst parents and children. They let the grandparents teach them. And I think, if we look at conflicts today, even in my work, that's a big part of it. That the teacher is supposed to be the grandparent, not the parent. But then my parents were very powerful as well. And really, they went to boarding school. And they all had their own story. And I like to tell my dad's, and I'll share it really fast because he was a very strong, powerful Inupiaq man that came from a large family. Both my parents came from families of 8 or more children. And I have 6 sisters and 3 brothers. And so my father was sent to boarding school far away from where we were from in the southern part of Alaska. And they would just send them there and leave them there. And he had no way to get home. And we were hundreds of miles away. And so he just worked on the fish dock down in Southeast Alaska where he was sent to boarding school until he raised enough money to fly home. And then he never went back. So he was a high school dropout. He lied and got into at the time it was Alaska Territorial Guard. His captain realized right away that he had skills that they wanted. And so they helped him get his GED. During this time, he was in the Territorial Guard became the Alaska National Guard. And he was the first Inupiaq general in the National Guard.
Wow.
So during the 70s, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, he was one of the leaders from our region that fought for our lands. And he became the first president of our regional corporation, as well as the first borough mayor. And so he did all these different things in one lifetime. So he really instilled that. Like, I do a lot of different things in my current life journey. And that's why, because that was my role model. Was we have sayings like in our traditional medicines, water is your first medicine, laughter is your second. And so it talks about the balance of making sure you're hydrated, but also laughter releases the chemical in your body that allows your body to balance in this beautiful way so that you have healthy mental health and healthy physical health. But like, those elements are things that I grew up with that are truly blessings that feed my soul today, right? And so I'm remembering those things every day when I start to get a sniffle or whatever. Am I drinking enough water? Am I laughing enough? Maybe I'm crying too much, I mean, and then the other thing is, if your mind is too busy, you're not supposed to use it. You're supposed to use your hands to sew, to make things, so that your hands are busy, not your mind, because when your hands are busy, you have to focus. So your mind has to shut off. And so, like, I think about those simple ways of living that are so powerful and could help so many people today, right? But yeah, they totally formed who I am.
Wow, such wisdom. I love, love, love when you had said water is the first medicine and laughter is the second. Literally, what I heard in my mind was like a whole bunch of aunties all sitting around laughing, and they're like, hey. And how we are when we come together, we start joking. Like, you'll say something and another person will say, and then you're just like a barrel of laugh. It's so true. So true. I love also what you just said about our mind. Real quickly, I don't know if you know this, but a couple of years ago, maybe like 7, 10 years ago, I decided to take meditation. I wanted to know and understand it. So I took the class. It was like a 9-week course. Anyway, it finally hit me. And I was like, hey, this is what we do when we rug weave, or, when we're beading, or when we're gardening. This is meditation. It's like you're fully present physically, and you're not in the head spinning, So that's so beautiful. I love how you mentioned about the grandparents' role in shaping your children. And so you being a parent, and I love that you mentioned like how large your family is, but you being a parent, how are you bringing in the cultural knowledge into parenting, or as you're now even a grandmother?
Yeah. So my oldest granddaughter is 17, and she spent a lot of her life in my household just because her mom was a single mom. So I was always like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. Can I just have her? But I never got to have her. Her mom's still her mom. And my kids all live within a 70-mile radius of where I live. So that's one of the reasons I do statewide work, is so I could be close to all of my children and all of my grandchildren. I had one that moved out of state for a little while, and she moved right back. So they're all very Alaskan. And I think part of it is because they all are hunter-gatherers. They harvest just like I do during salmon season. We all harvest together. So the grandkids are there and they're learning. But yeah, I try to share as much as I can with them. They go to English speaking Western schools, and our language is the thing that really connects us to the land. And we're still trying very hard to revitalize it in ways that, is more attainable, more like Babel, because our languages were not written languages. They became, the alphabet actually became a written language, a written alphabet in my lifetime. In my later high school years, my mother was one of the linguistic specialists, and so she helped them with a dictionary. But not all words are translatable. So our language is totally land-based and water-based. So everything is based on where you live. And so the dialects even change because of the topography of the land or the sea, the water, if you're on a river, versus like we speak a coastal dialect because we're on the coast. There's a river dialect on one river and a different river dialect on the other river. and we can understand each other, but they're very distinct to that land, you know, that landmass. So that environmental space is where your language is rooted. That is something that I'm trying very hard to make sure that the tools are there for my grandchildren, because they'll never understand the way I speak, I don't know, kind of philosophical about our way of living unless they understand the language. Because I grew up with the language. I don't speak fluently because I'm not around people often enough to speak fluently, but I speak enough to have conversation. And it really is like I've been a traditional dancer my whole life, and I just came from a traditional dance festival, and it's all in my language. And so, like, I understand all of those stories in my language, but they're not necessarily translatable into English because we don't have word for word. We don't take a word, make a sentence, make a paragraph. Our words are very phrase based. So, one word is like saying "Hilugakpin" is like "Hello, how are you?" Right? One word or one phrase is a bunch of English words, so it's hard to translate sometimes. But what we've also done is like make sure that we have like coloring books and things that kids could start learning. But even in the fashion I do, calling the animals by their traditional names, my kids didn't know any different. They thought those were English words when they went to English school. And somebody would say, I don't know what you're saying. They'll be like, that's a fox, you know, and they're like, well, that's not what we call it. And so they grew up with words riddled into their English language. And so my grandkids are the same way. So every now and then, now I get a text from a 10-year-old grandkid that will say like, what does this mean in English? Like they just know the Inupiaq word. So we're trying, you know, and each generation gets a little more watered down. And so to me now, my focus is in my lifetime for my grandkids and great grandkids and the future generations of ancestors coming is to make sure they have the tools to remember, that they have the recordings of the dances and the language being sung, that have the stories translated so that they could tell that story to the next generation. And then really focusing, like my big task is on the language revitalization and making sure that we have tools for future generations of Inupiaq and Inupiaq Nunat, which is our Inupiaq people migrated across the circumpolar north. And so we have relatives in northern Canada, Greenland, and Russia. And so the Inuit Nunat is all of that cap of the world, right? And we are the stewards of that space. And now with climate change, with the melting permafrost, it's going to offset the regulator for the heat system for the entire planet. So the work we do is critical to saving the planet. So like all of those things are like new knowledge because we're bridging those gaps between science and traditional knowledge and understanding these earth systems. I mean, our ancestors understood them because in their time, they didn't have airplanes, but they had medicine people that could fly to other places to see what was happening. And so those are woven into our stories that they had all this knowledge about the earth system. And so we were raised to be stewards of the North, but understanding that it is critical to the planet itself. So that's a lot of storytelling in one little slew there. Sorry.
It blows me away how much our ancestors knew about the stars, the planet, the plants, the animals. They really understood what a healthy ecosystem is. And it made me think about my grandfather on my dad's side. He's a really quiet, strong leader, community person. And anyway, I remember one time my auntie, we're all herding sheep, we're on a horseback, and she was saying, Grandpa says that if you see this color all around, you know, like when the sun is set, the color around, you see this color, what it means is that things are changing in our climate and in the world. And so we have to be careful. We don't want it to be that way.
Mm.
So, you know, they understood, they used the stars for constellation. And Like I always like to refer to like smudging, right? Like there are different ways that different tribes do that. Like we use cedar, the Dakota folks use sweetgrass, and science is finally catching up with us. And I think they, in this one article, it said that actual smudging is good because what it's doing is killing the bacteria in the
Mhm.
space. They had to do science to figure out what we've been doing all along. It just blows me away.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. I do a lot of work in that space of science and research, mainly focused on the Arctic, but it really is like we've come to a place where traditional knowledge needs to be valued far greater than any Western educational context because our elders even told us the Western school is simply an added tool to your toolbox. And I had an elder tell me once that he only spoke in Iberian and he got kicked out of the English school because, well, they kept slapping him and putting him in a corner and he told his parents and his parents took him out. And so he never went back. But when he got his first job, it was at a mine. He says, our world is the harshest on the planet. And the reason we survive is because we mimic nature. If we didn't mimic nature, we couldn't become part of it, and therefore we would die because the Arctic is so extremely harsh, especially in the winter. Then he said he got to this job and he just observed. It was just a summer job. And then in the next summer, he came and he was actually doing what his supervisors had previously done the year before. And so he had learned some of the words, the terms. By the third year, they made him a lead and gave him his own ABAP team to teach them how to do this mining job. So that was, his way of adaptation was to integrate himself and mimic English people, just like he mimicked nature to survive. And it taught him English. That's how he learned English. And he's very fluent in English, but he always says and reminds all of us that it's simply a tool in your toolbox, but your knowledge and your way of thinking in nature, mimicking nature, cannot be taught in a Western school because it's too complex. You can't teach astrology through a traditional lens in the context of Western educational systems because it's too complex. Western science looks at it through a particular lens. We don't. We blow it up and look at it through a broad lens of the universe, whereas we don't say necessarily constellations. To us, the constellations are stories in the sky. They're just an extension of us, right? So, and there our ancestors reside there, is how we believe our northern lights up here are our ancestors coming to visit us and tell us that you're doing okay. As long as we're still here dancing in the sky, you're doing okay. And so all of those things, though, the philosophical aspect of our ways of thinking are much more complex because our lessons were all retained by memory. And so if you think about an indigenous memory bank versus something taught in short-term memory in a Western educational context, two very different systems of knowledge. One going back thousands of years, the other very context to a particular topic in a particular space, right?
I love that Indigenous memory bank. That's the first time I heard someone use those words in one phrase.
Yeah. So I try to think that way when I'm even in a Western setting, when I'm learning, because if you think through a Western lens, we get anxiety and nervous, right? Because we think we're not going to be able to do it or learn it. But in an indigenous lens, if you go use your indigenous mind, you're just like, our ancestors would be laughing about this. Like, keep doing it until you do it, right? They wouldn't make it a bad thing. They would just say, keep trying. You're going to eventually get it. So,
yeah, because I really try to listen to my intuition. And you're exactly right. When I don't and I freak out or I'm worried, like I don't know, then I get anxiety and I get overwhelmed and I get stressed. But if I'm listening to my body and just like really just being, it feels so much lighter than the
yeah.
other way around. So that's exact, but what you just shared is like a really good example, I feel like, of traditional knowledge that can help bridge some of the cultural gaps. And it's so powerful how you're sharing the beauty and the power of our traditional ways.
Yeah, I think that awareness is a big part of it because all traditional cultures are, especially if they're to a particular land base, they're observant of that land base, right? That environment, they are a part of it. They're not living on the land, they are one with the land. So there's this awareness, self-awareness. And really, I think that we're still dealing with the trauma of feeling less than, when really, if you look at it, we are so much more than what our colonizers taught us. Whether it's religion, and I'm not anti any of that. I speak and articulate English words, not all of them. Sometimes in the science world, I'm like, that will not roll off my tongue the same way because I don't use those muscles, right? But when you're learning your indigenous language, even your mouth has to change the way it works, because if you're conditioned in English, your muscles are only conditioned in English. And so you start practicing sounds and words. Even if you learn 3 words and you say those 3 words all week, you will feel different, not only because the muscles, but the neurons in your brain and the connectors to those muscles are now waking up. Your ancestors' muscles are awakening you, right? So I think that there are things that go way deeper than we actually think about, because we're so confined to thinking like a Western confined educational thought process, this Western way of knowing. And I say Western because English is spoken differently across. There are parts of England that I went to that I couldn't even understand English. So I'm just saying that in a Western context for me, because Western Americans, we traded for thousands of years with Europeans and with the Orient all along our coast of Alaska. We have beads from Italy from 40,000 years ago, like crazy. I don't even know, like science has to tell us that, but our ancestors told us we did that. So, but I say like the conditions part is what we were taught by Western American English colonizers. And so we have to make sure we don't get caught in that rut, right? That we pull ourselves back into the space of awareness. I would say, you talk about meditation, they have certain sounds that they send out into the universe, frequencies, right? But we're a frequency. We have our own frequency. Your indigenous language has frequency. When it awakens in you and somebody else hears it, it resonates and it just ripples out, right? So that it's like this positive energy. You talk about the light. Well, you'll start seeing things differently. Your eyes receive and the receptors change. Everything changes when you have this awareness. And so it's more than this conditioned way of thinking, right? So we have to remember that. And we forget, because it's so much easier to go to the confined way of thinking than it is to really broaden and question this space of awareness. So I think that that's another great example. I work with a group of healers across our state. We have 11 distinct cultures in Alaska. We're not all the same. We have everything from frozen Arctic tundra where the Inuit live, where I'm from, Inupiaq, to temperate rainforest where the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian live. And so we have very distinctly different cultures. But when our healers get together and we start talking about those sounds and the frequency of those sounds that are healing to our people, it's no different than you learn from a Buddhist monk how to make these sounds of their culture, and it resonates and it calms your body. Well, you have them too. Every indigenous person has them. So it could be something as we have a word it's ariga, and ariga is it's so good. It's just like this expression of light, right? When you taste something and it's so good, you say ariga, or you see some cute little kid dancing, and you're just like ariga. It's just this expression of happiness, right? And so, but when you say that, and like I say it, my mouth is doing things that I even salivated when I said it so many times in a row. But that awareness, like how often do you say things and you think about, what is it doing to my saliva? How does my tongue feel? How do my cheeks feel? Wait, how does my head feel? How does color look? Like you start asking becoming more and more aware. I think that's something that could resonate and help people today, because we're so easily confined by what we don't know, right? We just go to this box of what we were trained to know.
Mm, you are so wise. I want to spend more time with you. There's so much wisdom. It's so good. You had talked a little bit about like language and English, and I know that you went and did some studying in London. Like, how did that happen? How did you even find yourself deciding to go in this practice and end up in London? What was that like? Especially coming from Alaska and how you grew up and what you were around.
Yeah, I was always curious about our European ancestry that they never stayed, right? They just like passed through either on ships or they were pilots or whatever. And their DNA got mixed with our DNA because we have, beautiful women. And anyway, but I was always curious about that. So when I was in school, of course, I was in an English school. I was involved in a lot of things. I do a lot of I come from a very artistic family, so I write. I write poetry. I write short stories. I love to draw and paint and sew. And so I actually filled out the back of a Glamour magazine ad to the school in London called the American College in London. All you had to do is put in your name and stuff, and then they sent you a packet, and then that's how you communicated by mail, right? Well, I got in, and because it was so bizarre, all of our local entities, like our telephone company and our TV station and our borough and our city office, everybody donated money, like scholarships for me to go, because they were like, "You're really going to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, like, nobody's like, why not? Right? Nobody else wants to do this. I'm going to do this. And so I came from, my hometown is on a gravel spit. And so there's no way to grow. So it's always been around between 2,500 people and 3,000. It's still in that population area because there's no place to build. And so it was always that size since I was a little kid. And so I jet setted to London, and I went to this American college in London, which did everything from business economics to, they had a big fashion school. And that was my whole thing. It's like, I had just like, I think I was in 10th grade when I first saw Vogue and Glamour magazine. And I was fascinated. Like, this is real. Like, it seems so fake to me. Right. So I went to this design school, and they had study tours all over Europe as well as in Morocco. I went to Morocco for a few weeks and studied culture and design there. And so I had these tidbits of culture and design across Europe. And the college hosted these fashion shows at the Swiss Center in London. And I was there for 2 years. And so the students, we had those fashion students, it was called general fashion back then. You had to learn how to design something and then learn how to sew it, create it. And then you had to model it. And then you had to work backstage as a helper to dress the models. And like each quarter had a thing, right? And so you learned the whole holistic aspect of fashion, the fashion world. It was fascinating to me. And so then I came home and I realized I was back in my town where we had broken English, and I don't think I'm going to be a fashion designer anymore, but it always, the artist piece of me, I still do museum shows, exhibits, and I do bits and pieces just to keep that part of me alive. And so I do 1 or 2 fashion shows a year. My hope is to, as I retire out of this corporate American job, that eventually I'll be able to do more shows abroad. My hope is next year to do a show in Milan, and then just still do that, but introduce, like, everything is a story to me. So even my fashion pieces tell a story. I think I gifted you earrings, and they were the protector earrings. They have polar bear and fish skin leather and obsidian. They tell a story of protection. And so even my fashions speak that. Everything is an art piece to me. So, and I want that storytelling element to go with it. So I don't think I'll ever just be like, I mean, maybe I will just be that designer that mass produces. I really like the creative side of making art pieces and somebody really enjoying the story behind that.
Yeah, your work is beautiful. I haven't seen your paintings. I should have asked you for one of your poems that we could have read. I would love to have one of them to read in the future podcast. That would be amazing. But the fact, oh, thank you for telling a story because I was really curious. I was really curious about how you or what led you to London. That's a really cute story and how you applied and the community surrounded you and supported you to go there. And when you think about it, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the fashion industry in terms of what you describe and what it's like now. And as you, I know you're well aware, like how much of our Indigenous people from all over are really like showing up.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to witness.
it really is. I was very blessed. One of my shows I did at a traditional gathering here in Alaska just so happens that Juana Chasing Horse was here, and I knew her from my climate work because she was a young teenage advocate for our people. And so the climate advocacy piece, I knew her from there. And now she was busted into the fashion world, right? And so she said, Auntie, can I wear one of your pieces? I'm like, oh, yeah. So anyway, she modeled for me. And then I gifted her the piece. Well, she wore it on the red carpet. And I had landed, I was on a work trip to Utqiagvik and I landed and my phone goes crazy. Like everybody's sending pictures of her in my fashion, and she got interviewed by whatever the Young Vogue Junior or whatever it is, the Young Vogue, and she was chosen as one of the top 10 fashions of that.
Wow.
I don't know, some award ceremony, and so yeah, so it really is. And then like to see her grow in the last couple of years, just amazing. So yeah, I totally honor all of our Indigenous designers. I mean, these are people who normally like the skin sewing piece of it. We aren't trained. These are natural ancestral lineage that is
Mhm.
our DNA, and I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing to see because it's like our indigenous artists are really following their intuition to create and using nature to help create their pieces. So I'm curious how do you see indigenous fashion playing a role in cultural preservation and self-expression?
You know, I really think one, it's opening new doors, right? It's space that we haven't been in. I mean, we have a lot happening just in America right now that's really hard to swallow. We honor our twin spirit people. They're double blessed, double gifted. So our views of certain things that are called equity and inclusion in our Western world totally are the opposite of what's happening in our, and the fashion speaks that to me. That the stories behind the people in that space is the power. That's the power, because we have this ancient wisdom that can be shared and could help the entire earth heal. It can also help people break down all those barriers, and instead of having these confinements. And so I see, yeah, I certainly do. I have Indigenous art all over my house. I make things and wear them. I just wore new mucklucks, which are boots, fur boots. And I had to laugh because even my boots had a story. They had furs from all over the coast of Alaska, and they all were scraps. And I put them together and made these beautiful boots. So it's like everything becomes an expression of our who we are as Indigenous people. And so when I see artists, even the sizes of artists, like we're all different shapes and sizes, and we don't look, one tree doesn't say to the other tree, oh my gosh, your leaves are so green, or and so like even that mindset is there. It's embedded in the models. It's embedded in, it's just like culturally, I just think we're a frequency that they didn't know was coming, and then they're gonna have a hard time reckoning with it. Yeah.
I love that tree analogy. I really do. If we could see each other that way, hush, and accept ourselves too. I love that. I love that tree analogy. I'm going to borrow it.
Okay.
I will definitely give you credit. So I'm curious, what traditional materials do you love to play with and also maybe even a technique that you a traditional technique that you like to incorporate in your designs?
Each show, I like to do themes. And so I love weaving textiles. I really think something that's very negative on the planet in the fashion world is all these microplastics and fabrics, right? And so really looking at more organic, natural, sustainable fabrics, I think is something that really rings true to my heart, because I use a lot of furs, and all of our leathers are from our skins. I mean, we don't even call them leather up here. We call them skins. And then our furs, every part of the animal is used. I'm going to just use a seal as an example because they're so cute and they're so soft and they're so yummy. So we have a lot of seal in our sound, and so it's a main staple of our marine mammal food. We use the furs for multitudes of things, everything from boots to hats to mittens to jackets to everything, right? Pants, warm pants. And then we also use the bigger seals, the bearded seals. We scrape off the fur and use that skin, which would be like a leather, to make boats, right? Umiaks that are the boats that go out to hunt the whales still today, because there's no other material, textile, that matches the sound of a umiak in the water. They have yet to create a man-made material that could compare to it. So that to me is really powerful. But just knowing that, right? So we have the seal, then we eat the meat, and then we render down the fat and make it into an oil, like an olive oil, but it's seal oil. And we use that for everything. We dip our meat into it. We dip carrots, and like we like to grow vegetables too, because when Westerners brought things, they did bring some good things. So we love root vegetables with our traditional foods, our nakbeak. And nakbeak, the translation of that word is the real food. Like, I mean, literally Inuit, it means real people. So like we're really basic. It's like, okay, real people eating real food. So I think about things like that when I'm sewing, when I'm creating art. I want it to be sustainable, but I want people to truly ask me questions about the story behind the art, right? And if it's just simply a t-shirt or whatever, that's kind of hard to ask the story of a t-shirt, right? But if it has a print on it, you could ask the story of the print. But so I think that way. But yeah, it really is that's the element of design for me, is to make sure that the storytelling and the wisdom of our way of living is 100% woven into that. So it becomes the thread or the sinew of the piece. Yeah.
I love the stories. I think it's important because when you talk about it that way, you're basically bringing it to life. Like it is alive.
Yeah.
Right? Because these pieces that you're talking about came from life.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, there have been moments where, I mean, I sew for hours, I'm really tired, and I'm skin sewing a wolf ruff or something. And I swear the wolf just spoke to me like, this wolf is really old and this one was really young, and look at the skins and look at the color in the fur, and look at this one, it looks different. It looks like an elder. And like the energy of the animal becomes part of the sewing, right? So I totally truly believe that, again, it goes back to that vibration. We're all energy vibration. And those animals, they still have spirit. Sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not, but they still have it.
Yeah. Is there a piece that you've designed that it just has real deep personal meaning for you?
Yeah, I say this every show that, this is my favorite one. I like to do collections. So I did like a collection of stories of berries and animals from my region. That was really fun because I collaborated with my cousin who's a master beater. And so we did these really beautiful like birds and berries. And we did ulus. Ulu is our knife that we use to cut all our, it's an ancient knife that we use that's kind of curved on the bottom. So we did ulus and seals because that's what we use to cut up our food. But I don't know. I also did a piece for missing and murdered Indigenous women. I've done 3 of them now. 2 of them were museum pieces. And one was that really just, each one has a story. So it touches your soul, like you're honoring somebody or something, whether it's the animal or the land or the place or the person. and you're honoring them by creating something that's going to honor them in a way that is different. It's creative and artistic. And so, and then it gets to continue to be honored. Like I did this, and ravens are a big part of our storytelling world, because once you intimately have a relationship with a raven, the whole clan knows who you are. And they have conversation with you, and they're just like the coolest bird. Anyway, so I did this missing and murdered Indigenous woman piece with with a raven, as well as the red hand. But I did everything in salmon skin leather, in the colors of the red and black, and it really was. I would say, if anything, I don't know that I have a favorite piece, but I will say that one was really impactful to me because of it honored something that needed honoring, right?
I want to know, speaking of honoring and the stories, and I want you to tell me, if you feel comfortable, about this story.
Yeah, this was just the other day.
No way.
Yeah, actually, I just came from Ukqiagvik. This is Ukqiagvik, which is also known as Barrow. It's on the very tip of the top of Alaska. I was up there for our Kiviak feast. It's the messenger feast, and it's a dance festival for Inuit dancing. But those are the boots I made, the mucklucks, that are from all the different furs. The white is polar bear. And then I made the parkie, that's the jacket. And then I'm standing by whalebone arch, that's the whalebone ribs. And then to the side of me, you can see the frame of the skin boat. That would be the umiak, but it doesn't have the skin on it because we take the skin off every season and make new skin for it. And then, of course, the ancestors dancing in the sky, the northern lights, or aurora borealis. That really is like, and then the headband I'm wearing is Black Fox. That's something I made as well. So that the story here is that, traditionally we've been living in the same geographic space on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. And we've incorporated using fabric, textiles into our way of living, but we still need to make those warm things in order to survive and mimic nature. And so I think it's really important to understand that it's not just about a piece of clothing. It's about an ancient history that continues to adapt and live in a sustainable fashion with nature.
It's a beautiful picture, and I'm so glad that I couldn't stop looking at it, because I was like, I've never seen anything like that, especially with the whalebone. It's so beautiful. When I saw it, it made me think about when I first went to Europe, and I saw how amazing those churches were, how big they were, and how beautiful. It just brought me to tears because it was art. I was infatuated and just in love with the art, and wondered about the artists and what inspired them to make such beautiful, beautiful churches and buildings. And when I saw that picture of you, I was like, it's a story. I'm like, it could be a storybook. Seriously, I was like, wow, it's so beautiful. Thinking about the future, I know that you're wanting to do more shows at some point once you shift your career, because the beautiful thing about you is like you see your work, you like your day job and the culture and the art, it's all intertwined. It's not a single thread. I see that you've really weaved these pieces into your everyday, even as a grandmother and a mother. What do you hope to see in the next 10 years for our Indigenous people?
Yeah, I hope it just stays on this. I mean, I feel like even in the past 10 years, the elevation of and the bravery and courage it takes for people to speak out and speak up and for their voices to be heard. My hope in the next 10 years is that Indigenous thought process, philosophies, the way, not only the way of knowing, but the way of thinking and doing, that those things are elevated above the Western confined methods of science and research, that we are no longer studied, that we are accepted, and that our people start the reverse train knowledge sharing, right? So we have educational systems that teach us. I think it's time to reverse that and teach them, because that's the only way our planet is going to survive, is for us to not be a severed relationship with it. And we have most of the population on the planet right now has severed their relationship with nature. And to me, that's the future. Is we have to build those and rebuild those connections. Yeah.
What do you feel like you're still learning about yourself?
Oh gosh, I learn every day. I crack myself up because I have this little narrative in my head. So one of the things I'm currently doing in my day job is making sure that our cultural celebrations and festivals are part of career development, because the richness you get from participating in the people you serve in their culture, whether you're native or non-native, totally changes how you do your work, right? So to me, it's professional development, it's leadership development. And so I got to bring one of my young staff with me, and we had a wonderful time. And it just really, we had so much laughter that I realized how healing it is. And I didn't say anything, but we got back on the plane to leave. And after spending, so much time together this week, and she said, you know what, I really needed this, like, laughter for my soul. This is like, I can't tell you how much I needed this. And I know that was good to hear. So I really think that, we really have to be mindful and intentional about everything we do. And that to me, I mean, that's my self-awareness for myself, is to make sure that I listen like my grandparents did to me, that I intentionally do things that align. So my grandmother would say, you have two ears and one mouth, listen twice as much as you speak. And then her friend who is a traditional healer would say, make sure that your thoughts align with your mouth, the words that come out of your mouth align with your hands, the action that you're doing. So there's balance in that. And so I would say that I'm learning more of that about me, not only in the work I do, but in how I create art and how I even eat food. Like, we have this thing about eating our food with our hands. And our ancestors, our elders would say it's because your nerves in your fingers need to tell your brain to get your stomach ready for the food. And so then your saliva changes, and then whatever you put in your mouth is your body's ready to receive. And like simple little things like that, I'm really starting to be aware of. I don't care if people look at me funny. I'm touching that food. If it has processed something in it, I immediately feel it. Like, that's awareness, right? Like, okay, I can't eat that. I'm gonna play with my lettuce, and if it got processed on it, I ain't eat it.
Well, I eat with my fingers all the time. And I love that because it is reminding me of my grandfather. At the end of his meal, he would literally like kind of rub his hands and pat his body. And in Navajo, he would say, thank you. May this food keep me strong and good mindset and help me finish my day. Like, he would be saying that in his in Navajo and
Mhm.
and so that was his way of like making sure that he's, thinking, of course, the cook, but also what the food can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about, even simple little things like when kids get angry, they would say, go outside and give it to the wind. You don't need that energy in here. Like, simple little things like that, that I think we could teach the world to live in it's simple, but it's so complex, right? It's like simple thinking, but so harmonious with being well. Yeah.
It's simple and it makes sense. Earlier, talking kind of about the generation and great grandparents, your grandparents, and you, and our children these days, right? And how education has shifted our thinking. And earlier, you were saying something about like how we see ourselves. When you talk about go outside and yell at the wind, it sounds funny when you think about it, like maybe a non-native person who's never been in that environment, they'd be like, what? But to us, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Go out there and release in this way because Mother Nature can handle it, can
Yeah.
take that and they can take it and use it somewhere else. So
Yeah. Well, then, and usually you end up laughing, which is your second medicine, right?
yes, you've shared so much wisdom from your relatives, from your culture, from your healers, from your work. It's overwhelming. I really do mean what I say. I could literally talk with you more and more. I have to bring you back on later on. One of the questions that I always ask the folks who've come on, I always like to ask them, well, what's one last thing that you want to leave our listeners? Words of wisdom, a story, something that you just would love to share to have them take with them as we continue to go forward during these uncertain, weird times.
Yeah. I was just at the dance festival, and we have this one particular dance that call it the box dance, but the traditional name is the kalulak, and it's a dance ceremony song to remind us that Eagle Mother originated the song and dance for Inipel thousands of years ago. There's variations all along the coast, and so it's really interesting. Like even in other cultures, we have this dance up here. So we all honor, creator in this method, but it really is like that grounding. The rhythm of the drum is the rhythm of your heartbeat. It brings you to a place of calm within your spirit and both your physical and spirit body. And it reminds you that you come from ancestors that live in your DNA because you carry DNA, especially the lineage of the mother. Carry a baby in you, you carry your grandmother's DNA, your mother's DNA, your DNA, and your baby's DNA. And then that passes on. So there's this thread of connection that continues to live. That DNA is transferred physically. So we have it, the oral history is transferred orally. And then we have that vibration and that energy and DNA that transfers physically. And so we get to tap into that. And for Indigenous people, to remember that is a beautiful thing. And I guess that's what I would leave is like, for Indigenous populations, you have something in you that is so ancient that you could access anytime. But for the non-Indigenous people, you get to learn about that. And those philosophies and those stories, which are really oral history, could teach you so much about yourself because every human being was Indigenous at one point in time. We all came from tribal or some type of lineage that was clan or tribe, right? So regardless if you're native or non-native, you could learn from that and it could bring you peace. And that to me is something that we should never, ever forget.
It's so beautiful. Snaps all around. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Before I let you go, I always like to do some fun, light, quick round of questions. So earlier in our conversation, you were talking about food, all from all places, air, land, and water. So what's your go-to comfort food when you need a pick-me-up?
That's another one. It's hard to say I have a favorite because I had something the other day that I hadn't had since I was a little kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, this used to be my favorite. So, but I call myself, my name, Catalina, is she summoned the whales, and I am a whale eater. I truly love the gift of Avil, and that's our whale, so our bowhead whale. So that is probably, I would say, the food that I eat the most.
What's one smell that instantly takes you back to your childhood?
Boiling beluga whale. I know nobody will understand that, but when I was a kid, we had a gravel beach, and when they brought in the beluga whales, they cut them up on the beach, and everybody, the whole community was out there, and they had fires going and big pots, and they would boil the skin and blubber, and then we would eat it right there on the beach. But that smell, I could write that in a Facebook post, and everybody who grew up on that beach knows what I'm talking about. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember.
It makes me curious. I want to know what it smells like.
Yeah.
If you could wear one pattern or texture for the rest of your life, whether it be fur, fish skin, beadwork, what would you pick?
Probably fur. I mean, we use lots of different furs, But I really like the feel of fox and sea otter. It's really soft. I really like that.
What's one thing about being from your tribal community, being with your native relatives, or just being native? What's one thing about being native that makes you laugh because it's so true?
Oh gosh. um, you know what? So our dancing is we're silly. Like our value system, like one of our values is humor, right? So we love making people laugh because that's our medicine, right? So I would say like the dancing part of it that constantly makes me laugh. But then I think about you like laughing loud, a loud anti-laugh, like, and then when one person laughs, then you laugh harder. And like, you might not even remember what you're laughing about, but you just keep laughing. That to me is like the cross sector. Like when I hear big, loud anti-laughs, I don't care if I'm a stranger and I'm sitting in an airport in Chicago. I know like that I could laugh with them.
That's so true. You're preparing a survival kit for a year out in the wilderness, out where you're located. What's one item you refuse to leave behind?
I would say my nanik, and that is a seal oil lamp, and it's made of soapstone, and it could heat the igloo, which is a house. It could provide light, and then it could melt snow for water. So it's like a survival masterpiece.
Wow. Wow. Okay, two more. If you could name an Arctic constellation, what would you call it and why?
Maybe grandmothers, which we say on Anna is grandmother. I would say the Anna constellation would have the elements of an Anna. We have something we call a sunshine ruff. That's the ruff that's on my parkie that you showed the picture of. But it's many layers of fur that fan out like the sun. And in Canada, I think they call it a sunshine ruff. To me, like that would be the constellation, would be something that would fan out. That would be the Anna constellation that would make me think of all the Annas that have come before us that taught us so much. So that's what I would name it, the Anna constellation.
I could almost see it in a painting, or I could see you do something with that, with some fashion piece. All right, the last one. If your ancestors could send you a text message right now, what do you think they would say?
Ariga.
What is that?
That's the expression of happy and joy.
I love it. And I love that we laughed and a giggle. I do. Ayahat Deja, which is thank you, my sister. I appreciate you taking time to share a story with all of us and sharing such wisdom from your ancestors and from you and from nature. I look forward one day to see you again, and I know it will happen. I don't know when, but whenever Spirit allows us to reconnect, we will. And I just thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much, Beth. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And I too look forward to that day that I could give you a big hug and we could laugh together.
For real. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.